well, we are very fortunate to have with us today the awesome Reed Morano. um, Reed's projects include Frozen River, Little Birds, The Skeleton Twins, Vinyl, Meadowland, I Think We're Alone Now, and Handmaid's Tale. I don't think there's any more I need to say other than welcome, Reed. It's so great to have you with us today.
Hi.
It's a casual conversation. I'm just looking forward to catching up with you and talking about what you've been working on, and also talking about some of the projects that we worked on together. Because it's always just been an amazing experience, working with you and also seeing what you've done. Truly amazing. So I was wondering if you could just kind of share a little bit of your background with us and let us know, how did you get into this industry and what was it that made you so interested in filmmaking in the beginning?
Well, I I didn't have anyone in my family who was in the film industry, but we love to watch movies. And when I was growing up, that was a big thing that we did as a family. And I think my dad had some fantasies about being in the movie industry. And so he was always trying to live vicariously through me. And so, when I was little, he gave me a video camera and I didn't really know what I was doing, but it was just giant and I wanted nothing to do with it. And he was like, no, you're going to be in charge of documenting the family. And it sounded like a chore, so I was just not super into it. But he kind of forced me and taught me how to fade in and fade out, which is really all you need to know. And I just, I guess I took to it. And my mom said that I would be outside just filming the grass for hours, which is, that kind of sensibility probably carried over a little bit to me now. But I guess I liked it. And then, going forward in school, I was planning on going to Boston University for journalism, because I used to write a lot. And I did photography, a lot of photography. And, once I got in there, my dad sort of suggested, oh, why don't you go to film school, because you love taking pictures and telling stories. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a lot more fun and a lot less work. It sounded more fun because I really loved movies, but I just never thought of it as a job, even though that's what I did with my spare time. And I just didn't live in that kind of family. And then, my dad made that suggestion. So I applied to NYU Film School and then luckily got in. And and then basically thought I would do writing and directing because I didn't consider myself very technical. But then surprisingly, on the first shoot that I was on, when I was just a PA, basically, it was like a color sync film at NYU. So anyone who goes to NYU out there will know exactly what that is. And I was just figuring out what Apple boxes were and that kind of thing. But I found I was very, very enthralled with what the DP was doing. But also, now that I look back on it, it was probably just the DP was the one holding the camera and saying and telling everybody what to do. And I was like, oh, I want to do that job, But I mean, I think I just thought it was cool. All the things he was doing that I didn't understand yet, focus measurements and light reading, light meter. Even though I had shot 35 millimeter still film, I never used a light meter except for the internal meter. So I just didn't understand any of it, but I thought it looked like a good low pressure job. I wasn't sure, it's hard to, I think, to just start out saying you want to be a director because I think that you need to have life experience for that. And I thought, you don't need any experience to be a DP, clearly. No. I mean, it was more, I don't know why that was less scary to me. It was just probably because at NYU, everyone wanted to be directors or producers. So everyone was needing a DP. So it was easy to go into your class and just say, if you need a DP, I want to DP your film. So just and there was no real test at that level. You didn't really have, there were only a few DPs that rose to the top at that stage. And I was very jealous of their reels, people like Ben Cutchins, for example. Uh, I remember because it was in my class. But yeah, it was very like easy to make. You could cut your teeth there and make all the mistakes you wanted to and learn, and you still didn't know much when you came out at the end of the day because you needed to learn. I still needed to learn gripping and lighting and all these things, but it was that was kind of how it all started.
Mm. It's really great, and it's wonderful to hear that you met Ben, who actually we talked to a few weeks back, and it's great. Were there any other people that were like mentors or inspirations to you as you were starting in the industry?
Well, I mean, my cinematography teacher, Mike Carmine, who I'm still friends with today, he was a big mentor. He was probably like the main mentor for me. I also worked with on a documentary with a filmmaker named Mario Pacayo, who I worked with for a long time, and he was a big mentor. And I, made a documentary with him before I really went into film school, and on the Virgin Islands Olympic team. And then, just as far as people I looked up to, I really had like a wide range of people's work that I loved. But, I would say at that time, I was sort of looking at, Ellen Curris and Amy Vincent and Nancy Schreiber and, all of, those women who were the main, they were the only women who seemed to be doing that job. Even I didn't really feel like women couldn't do it at that stage, but I didn't really know until I started to get out of school that it was super unusual. There weren't that many, female DPs at the time I was in NYU. But, when I came out, I realized it was like, Valentina Caniglia was there, and Rachel Morrison, who's a good friend of mine, went to NYU too, but ended up going to AFI for afterwards. And, but yeah, there wasn't so many of us.
Mm. So that's actually a really good topic to kind of segue into, and we have questions coming in about that. And have you found yourself in a situation on a shoot where you had to deal with those kind of biases from actors or other filmmakers?
I mean, I think I've been lucky, but I have starting at the very earliest time in my career. I remember when we were at NYU and you used to have to, we were doing a car rig and I didn't really have a key grip at that time. And so I was the one setting up, I was the one rigging the hood mount. And there was a PA this is a very small potato shoot. This is like film school basically. And there was a PA, but it starts there, where you get your confidence. And there was a PA there who, maybe it was just after film school, but either way, there was somebody who was a dude who was like making comments about, are you sure that's gonna like stay? And on the car, I was like, if I wasn't sure, I wouldn't put the camera on it. I was like, but if you're worried, and I had put the whole thing on, obviously time was not a factor here, but I was like, if you're worried, I think, why don't you put it back on? So I just undid everything and took it off, and then told the guy to re-rig it, and he didn't know how. So that shut him up pretty quick. Yeah. And then of course the shot and it was fine. That's maybe not the best way to go about showing people what you're capable of doing, but that was when I was very young and kind of stupid. But I think going forward, there have been people that have doubted my abilities, but at the same time as those people have doubted my abilities, there were a bunch of other people who I would have never thought would work with me, who actually did hire me to for example, around the time when I was about to get into the union, I remember I interviewed for a film I wanted to do, a feature film that was probably like a $5 million feature at that point in time. And that was like a big feature for me. And I got along great with the director and the writer, and I was very excited about it. And interestingly, the producer, I think, didn't feel, because I was I have a tendency to match up with the people that I work with. so I can, you know, identify with them. And I think she wanted some kind of stern older male DP or something. And you know, we all seemed like we'd be great friends. And I think that was like a red flag to her. But I actually feel it had a lot to do with the fact that I was a woman. And then later I found out that she hired a male DP who was probably a little bit younger than me. So I thought it was a female thing. And it is what it is, because I didn't take that job. I actually ended up interviewing for a film to shoot with Rob Reiner. And I had about, I would say, a 23-minute interview with him and his producer, Alan Greisman. And I had a whole presentation and I had a whole, you know, lookbook and everything I made. And, you know, I went through it and they were like, that's great, that's great. All right, great meeting you. And I was like, that was weird. I hope the meeting, it seemed positive, but it was like the shortest meeting ever. And then I went, you know, I left the meeting and I was, you know, probably a few blocks away and I got a phone call from my agent, Mira, and she was like, they just called me, you got the job. I was like, that was fast. Like, so here it is, you know, this other indie film of the same size with a lesser known group of people and producer and everything like that. And then here's like Rob Reiner and Alan Greisman, who are like Hollywood, you know, legends. They're movies I grew up on. And they were just like, they just knew, he just knows what he wants. So he was just like, he liked the lookbook. He liked the pitch that I made for how it was going to look. It was going to be his first movie not on film. It was his first movie, you know, on digital. So as you may remember. And yeah, so then he just like, was like, cool. So it, you know, it's like a mixed bag. You get, that's why you can't let yourself get, you can't let you know, you can't let it get you down. You can't let it stop you from doing anything, because there's people that are going to believe in you and then there's people that aren't going to believe in you. And that was a pretty ballsy move. So if you know, older, you know, male director and producer who've been in Hollywood forever, since before I was born, made a million movies, you know, they didn't waffle or hem and haw. They were like, yeah, she knows what she's talking about. All right, cool. We're gonna hire you. And so, you know, it just shows that there are people, you can't generalize either about who in Hollywood is the problem.
Yep.
I've had, and then it goes the opposite, you know? So it's tough. It's like when I was gonna shoot Little Birds with Elton James, basically, we had been planning to shoot that movie for a long time. And when they finally got the money to shoot it, Elgin and Jamie Patrick, it turned out I was going to be 7 months pregnant. And so they were kind of like, you still want to shoot it? You know, like, you do, right? Like, and I was like, yeah, of course I'm going to shoot it. And it was interesting because, and I know this was just out of concern, but, you know, another person on that project, another crew member on that project was like, are you sure you don't want us to get you an operator? This was, of course, a non-union film. And like, you know, I love to operate. That's kind of like something that everyone knows. But, you know, it was before I had to follow those rules. And, you know, she was like, don't you need someone to operate for you? How are you going to carry the camera? And I was like, don't even come at me with that right now. Like, I get it. My gaffer can hold the camera, worst case scenario. Like, I'm not gonna, but never once did, you know, Elgin or Jamie question my ability to do that. They never once did. I'm sure everybody inside was a little concerned, you know, at certain moments in the shoot, but, you know, it definitely limits your abilities a little bit and your balance. You just have to kind of just think there's nothing, if you believe there's nothing you can't do, then that you can sort of manifest that, I think.
Yeah. And now that now that you're directing more, curious about your decisions when you're looking for a cinematographer.
Somebody with a sense of humor, who won't be grumpy and serious on set. No, I mean, basically, it should just be somebody who sees things similar to me. I mean, obviously, I would probably start out being like, do I love their aesthetic? You know, and I also get along with, I mean, most of my best friends are DPs, but, you know, you want somebody who's also not going to be sort of too set in their ways, because it's like I don't really have. I basically would just download with my DPs way, before the shoot, so that when we're on the shoot, I'm not sitting there. I don't like tell my DPs how to like light stuff. I won't lie. I definitely sit at the monitor sometimes and watch what they're doing from afar and be like, that maybe you didn't need to take that long on that lighting setup, like in my head. When I would say anything like that, joking around with them, I just don't step on anyone's toes. And I think if you're a DP, you treat DPs the way you would want to be treated, and so the people that I've worked with, the DPs that I've worked with, I think appreciate that, which is why we work together again. We want to work together again and again because they had a good experience. Also because I was pushing them to take the most risks, like I was like, if there was ever a time, I was like, I know we're on this big movie with like, all these people in the studio and everything. I was like, but you can make it as dark as you want to. I was like, just, don't worry about the film. I'll tell you when I see it. And I think it surprises people but also it's like, I want like the DP to be able to have a great time, like experimenting. And, it's always nice because whenever I work with someone else, like either, Colin Watkinson, who I did Handmaid's Tale, and I'm doing this Amazon series called The Power with him now. And we've worked together several other times, but what we do on our own is very different than what we do together. So it's just very much a look that is, I think, a combination of just our tastes, because he's a good listener, and then as far as, and then also I've worked with Sean Bobbitt, and same kind of thing. I mean, Sean probably was more aesthetically, we had a similar aesthetic. But it's just interesting collaborating because it's like the thing they had in common is they both wanted to get into my brain about the perspective in the film, because a lot of it, that's what it was about, was getting used to shooting a film in a way where it's a person's point of view rather than the rules of coverage. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that was probably one of the bigger things that that even Sean and I figured out together on rhythm section, so that was different than what people would normally do. And, but anyway, yeah, we had a really, really good time.
And do you still grab the camera now and then and operate as a director?
Yes. Tell anyone who I work with before I work with them that I do like operating a camera. It's not because I don't think the person that I hired can do it better than me or whatever, or that I would do it better than them. It's more that part of the relationship I have with the actors is that in certain scenes, I think it's nice for them to have me right beside them like that, and I do use it as a technique. Like, I think for me, I would miss that connection, and I don't always like to be far away. That said, for example, Sean and Colin are both amazing operators, so I could let them do the thing, and then sometimes I do the thing. They're cool about it, they're like brothers to me. So it's like, they don't. It's a weird thing to get used to, because if I was a DP, I would be like, if a director wanted to operate, I'd be like, go fuck yourself. But like, and I say that, so it's like, but if you tell them up front that I may do that and everybody knows, it's not like it's not like an insult to somebody's abilities. It's more like, oh, we just wants to have fun on this one. And so it did help on certain jobs where, for example, with Sean and I on rhythm section, I could prep this whole bus fight sequence, and then he was prepping the car chase, and we had a lot of stunts to prep simultaneously. So it was kind of nice that we could have two people who we both knew what the plan were for each of those things, and we could tag team in some way. So I think there are benefits at times to that,
Yeah, very cool. Did you, so just stepping back a little bit, you talked about how you didn't feel you were that technical when you were looking at a cinematography role. And do you feel like you've advanced that technical knowledge? Do you still stay away from it? What's your approach?
I mean, I think I did for a while. I think for a while I did advance it. You don't really, I think what it was when I was starting out, I didn't know if I had to know, like, what were all the answers I needed to know. And I realized I learned pretty organically. So it was like, even after school, I went and I was a genie intern on a indie film in Fire Island in Ocean Beach. And they took me, you know, they were like, all right, you're a genie. They were super cool and would like go on the truck with me and point out every piece of equipment that I needed to know as a grip. And that's when I went into gripping. So I kind of came up anyway through gripping and began key gripping, and I really liked it. I liked packing the truck, and like, you know, at the indie level, that was sort of what the domain was, and carrying things that were heavier than what I was supposed to be carrying and that kind of thing. But I think once you like, one of the things that helped me as a DP was doing these other parts of the job. Like also I worked as an electric for a little while, and I remember doing a short film up in the woods, and it was like rainy, and it was just like, I had to like drag like 4-aught through the mud for like a whole weekend and like coil it. And I was like, okay, never again. Not doing it. I was like, back to gripping. But I also AC'd for a while. And like, I think what it is and then you learn and accumulate knowledge as you need it, you know? So when a job called for a particular piece of equipment, you know, et cetera, that's how you would, for me, that's how I did it. I didn't like go try to learn everything up front. I just learned it organically. I remember I did a movie in Austria we got the stuff from ARRI Munich, and it was the craziest movie. We shot 35 millimeter and 65 millimeter in the Alps, and it was like this chase sequence going through the Alps and like all over the mountains and everything. And we were like hanging off the sides of mountains. This is stuff I would not do in real life. I'm not the most outdoorsy person, nor am I coordinated, nor am I athletic. Also, I'm lazy and I don't really like that kind of stuff. But anyway, long story short, whenever I have a camera or a job, I love to do it. It's like, that's why I know it's fun. I love my job, you know? So we went, there's a point to this story. So we went, I remember the very first time I learned to use the wheels, you know, the whirl head, which is very tricky and doesn't, you know, it's not natural. So I was operating a shot, and it was on 65 millimeter film. So basically I was burning 65 millimeter film on my first time using the wheels. And it was funny because I had this crazy director, Marcus, he didn't really care. He's like, you could do it, Reed, you could do it. And everyone was kind of like standing around me. Like, I don't know if you remember that movie, The Last Starfighter, the guy in and I felt like I was that dude on like playing the video game and everyone was watching me. But I think you know, it's like I put on the widest lens, and it was like the widest shot ever. If like, you know, if I screwed that up, it was going to be very sad. And but anyway, all that is to say is that I learned things as it was required of me. And then, you know, for example, honestly, this is pretty silly, but the first time I shot Anamorphic was on Meadowland. So it was the first time I was directing a film. And then I was also DPing it and operating it. And I was like, also, let's shoot Anamorphics this time, because I remember, because you guys had just got the master Anamorphics. And the reason I hadn't used them prior was because of, you know, I like to shoot wide open with very low light, and it's a nightmare. Any AC that's worked with me will tell you. My longtime AC, Kevin Akers, was put through hell for, you know, probably like 10 years or whatever, but was good. So that's the reason why I, you know, I'll work with people when they just like, they take it with a smile and have a sense of humor about it, which mostly he did. But yeah, so it was like, I do things like that. And then I, you know, day one on Meadowland with the Anamorphics, and I started to walk a little bit closer to Olivia Wilde, who was playing the main character, with the camera, and Kevin was like, and then like by like the end of the week, I'd figured out that if I put the close-up filters, you know, on the diopters, that I could have a tighter shot. And he was like, you can't just pretend like these are tighter lenses. It doesn't work that way. But I always like find some kind of workaround. And anyway, But you know, sometimes you just have to throw. I think the lesson behind all of that is sometimes you just have to go for it, and but also trying to like study and research helps as well. Surround yourself with also very smart people who know what they're doing, and I think as a director, actually, that's the best thing you can do is get amazing department heads and let them, you know, let them do what they do and help them, you know, like encourage them to give their, you know, give all the best things they've got.
Mm. Well, I think that's a good area for us to kind of jump into Meadowland, because I'd love to talk about that being your directorial debut. But like you said, you were also shooting and operating. You had an amazing cast that you were working with. So I'd like to, you shared some images with us, and I'd like to bring those up and just kind of talk about, you know, what inspired you to take this project on? You know, what was the driving force behind it? And also just the visual. What was it that you kind of keyed in on, and how did you decide to come upon that visual style for that film?
Well, I mean, I needed to do something that was easy for me. I mean, I think I needed to do something that was, it was sort of my naturalistic and just aesthetic that I like. And I wanted to always feel very natural, and also I very strategic. In order to do both jobs, I basically had to sort of plan a lot in advance. So my crew was, you know, the prep was really important as far as like, I really did decide what my shots were going to be beforehand, even though most of it was handheld. I always knew what the playing field was. I usually always stuck to the plan, I would say 99.9% of the time. And you just have to know, I just wanted to basically, not that I wasn't going to light it, but in like the interiors, for example, I would put all the lights outside so that the actor could work, so that they could kind of be spontaneous and work within a certain area, you know? So it was all about like thinking very strategically and smart, you know, using my DP brain as far as the right location to do that. And the best location you can get as a DP on an indie film in New York is a first floor or second floor corner apartment. And I was like, I wouldn't look at any other apartments unless it was a corner apartment on the first or second floor. And eventually we found this great apartment with my production designer, Kelly McGeehee, who's amazing. And it made it easier for the crew because we had a very small crew. And it was just nice because they could set all the lights outside. And I usually just stuck to what I said we were going to do. When we did it in prep, we mapped out where we were going to put everything, and then I would just do it. And very rarely were there many changes beyond that. You know, night interiors get a little sticky sometimes, but you know, it's like if you can set yourself up very well in prep, then you can kind of achieve that. And it was nice for me too, because I was able to finally light something without any. Oh, I also want to mention these are all uncolor corrected stills, actually. For people. And then, you know, Drew Geary at Company 3 did color corrected, and it was very nice in the movie. So if anyone checks it out, they'll see. But really what we did was we added more vibrancy and more color to the images later on. And so these are a little more, this was just kind of like our on-set light. You know, Charlie Anderson was my DIT. He's DPing now, but sadly. But great for other people, great for directors in general. But yeah, so it was just very naturalistic and simplistic and not overly, my producer said it like saved like an hour a day, and because it was just like I committed to what I was doing, because I had other things I was more concerned about doing. Because you never know how you're going to act in that situation. You know, I never directed before, and so I was very concerned about getting that right. And giving Olivia and Ruth and, you know, John Leguizamo and Giovanni and everybody, like whatever they needed in order to do what they needed to do. And I was still like baby steps kind of figuring it out, how to talk to them. But I think when you're a DP, you know, oftentimes DPs are very close with the actors because you're sort of like the person that's right beside them, either DPs or camera operators, have very special relationships with the actors. And I think it does kind of set you up really nicely if you were to segue into directing, if you really care about story, because you already have that bedside manner with actors who make them feel comfortable and connected. And I think also that sort of is part of the reason why I still occasionally like to operate the camera when I'm not DPing, because I always go back and now I go back and forth. I love working with DPs because it's like, when would a DP ever get to do that? Like, I get to see all of Sean Bobbitt's secrets and all of Colin's secrets, you know? Now I know what they are. I actually don't pay attention. But I think I got a little dumber, you know, now that I have awesome, you know, DPs I can work with. But still every once in a while you want to exercise that part of your brain. But yeah, we just had a fluid style, and it was an emotional story, so I really wanted to have a simple formula that I hopefully wouldn't screw up, because it was my first film, so I wasn't trying to like reinvent the wheel, except for the adding anamorphics into the equation part, et cetera, et cetera.
It's beautiful. And I'm curious if did the actors give you like a piece of advice that you really held on to and you kept from that first project?
I mean, I think it was such an amazing group of actors, because they knew it was my first time. They weren't judgmental. They weren't testing me. They were just happy to be there, and like, were patient. And, you know, like a lot of, you know, like it was different. What I learned from those actors was, and they did teach me this, is that each one of them had their own way that you needed to talk to them about the part. And they had their own things they wanted to talk about with it. And like, you know, like Olivia, we could talk about anything forever. Giovanni loved to talk about it. He would sit there while I was lighting a set, and Giovanni would like sit in the living room with me. You know, he's
very technical. Yeah, he loves that stuff.
So we would talk about the lighting while I was lighting the set. He would hang out with me. And then Luke is very few words, you know, he just was like, he likes a direction best if it's like 1 to 2 sentences, very simple, because it's like sometimes less is more. You don't want to fill people with too many ideas. And, you know, and like John Leguizamo is so fun, and we're going to work together again actually on The Power, but he would be like, okay, I'm going to give you like 3 different versions. You tell me which one you like the best, you know, but everybody's different. And that's what I learned. And it was such a great group of people to, and Lizzie Moss was on that, you know, she did a cameo, and Juno Temple and Scott Muscati. It was like it was so fun, and such a, you know, they made it very low pressure for me.
Yeah.
So.
And then it's interesting because for me, being kind of a little bit of an outsider, looking at Meadowland and then moving over to, I think We're Alone Now, I thought it was interesting because there seems to be, I don't want to say that the films are similar, but there's some similarities between the two films that I found really, really interesting. First, you know, approaching them both with anamorphic, and then also kind of the themes of loss and not knowing, you know, who you are, what is going to happen. I thought that was really interesting. And so I'd love to talk about that project as well and look at some of those images.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun. And I think We're Alone Now was even more intimate in a way, because it's a story about the end of the world. And, you know, we have this person, Peter Dinklage, who thinks he's the last man on Earth, and then along comes Elle Fanning's character, Grace, and basically is, you know, he thinks, okay, I'm not the last man on Earth, there's this other person around who's sort of like cramping my style a little bit. And you know, it's very intimate. I thought it should feel a little bit heightened in the look, and a little bit that, you know, that sort of, for a long time I was looking for a lens that would have a very weird kind of fall off in the focus and the shallow depth of field. And eventually I was testing lenses with Charlie actually, and you guys gave us the Lomos. I can't remember if the Lomos
Yeah.
were, but I remember you, and I was like, why wouldn't everybody use these lenses? And of course, it was like because they spin. The front barrel spins when you do the focus, and we can't really use a matte box and all these things. And I was like, fine, who cares? I don't need a matte box. I don't need any of that stuff. And my camera department was like, we're gonna kill you. I remember they had a whole thing. Tim, who was Pat Soakley, and Tim the TDA, they were pulling focus, and Connie Clapper was on the movie. But anyway, long story short, they had to do this whole workaround to make the remote focus work on the camera. But it was worth it because it did give the look I wanted it. And then also I should mention that a lot of these images, most of them are color corrected as well. And I'll just say that was on purpose for learning purposes. I just don't all the simple. But Tom Poole at Company 3 colored the final version. Did he? I don't know. I think he did. Anyway, yeah, so basically it also is more vibrant than what you see here. I just don't have a lot of final. That's actually a final, I think that one is final color correct. Maybe not, I don't know. Anyway, it was the same approach as Meadowland, but it was easier because there was only 2 characters in the whole movie, except for maybe later. Maybe there might be other.
Maybe we don't want to spoil the surprises, right?
But it was super fun. Turns out really hard on a low budget to make it appear that there's no people in the world. Would have been real good to do it around where we, during this time period. But this is only a few years ago we made this, and it's interesting. It's an intimate story about loss, and Peter Dinklage's character I think the point of it is he thinks he doesn't. Sometimes you need something that you think you don't need. And, it works its way into your life somehow, and maybe you reject it and everything, but ultimately you realize sometimes you have to also lose that thing to realize it's actually that I did want that. And that's what it's about. It's really about friendship and relationships and choices you make. And what I loved about this story and why I wanted to tell this story was that the original script written by Mike Mikowski was so unusual. So rarely would you see a movie about the apocalypse that wasn't about it wasn't about the people in the movie trying to figure out why the apocalypse happened or stop things from happening or survive. It was more like a story about friendship set against the apocalypse. But I also chose it for another reason, which was it has a very, interesting twist at a very weird time in the structure of the film. And I think that was the same thing that, bothered some people. It was actually the reason why I liked the movie, because I read it and I was like, I did not see that coming. And I think that was hard for some people to get on board with, but the people that got it and liked it really loved it. And I loved making that movie because, even though I look at it now, I'm like, I wish I would do all these things. There's some things I would do differently, but I'm still, I love it. I love the characters, and you sort of fall in love with them. And I love everything that the crew did. And I love the way it looks and what we lit it with. During the day, we lit everything with lights during the day, lights on the outside of the house, that kind of thing again. But we would, at night, I made a rule where we were trying to mostly only light with lights that his character Del would have available to him in the apocalypse, which were like battery operated, solar powered lights, flashlights, headlamps. And so we have a night scene in the movie where that's like one of the lights, for example, and on his desk there. And, you know, we would, with the exception of the big lights outside the room, everything inside was always something he could, you know, it was always something he would have as a light in the apocalypse. And, you know, it presented a little bit of a challenge, but we learned a lot of cool tricks. But yeah, we did have a scene at night outside where Elle's character at one point decides to leave. And so she leaves on this rainy night and goes to her car and goes to get her stuff and put it in the car. And we were gonna do a bigger lighting setup. It was Jason Velez was gaffing it, and Tommy Kerwick Jr. was my key grip. And we were gonna do a bigger lighting setup. And then we were like, no, we need to do this like, not movie lighting, like apocalypse lighting, you know, and make it really dark here. No one's around. So that was the challenge, was taking away the light. And so we lit that scene basically with headlamps, with 2 headlamps, a lantern, a hand lantern, and I think 2 Legos and some headlights, car headlights in the rain. And the rain helped, obviously. And then inside the car, Elle was inside the car, and then there was, you know, the light inside the car. But it turned out pretty well. And, you know, it was a cool thing we were able to do.
Yeah. It's there's a lot of really great questions from the audience I want us to talk about a little bit here. I thought it was really cool. Somebody asked about, do you still shot list and storyboard everything, or do you improvise a bit when you get on set now?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I hate storyboards. I never use them unless, I mean, as a DP, I would use them as required. You know, if the director wanted them, then great, but almost never. You know, I mean, I would use them for VFX or stunts and stuff, like where you really do need to storyboard each shot so you know everyone is on the same page, and it's for safety, and it's for, you know, visual effects and all these things. So that's when I would storyboard normally. And shot lists, I do still like making shot lists, even though my shot lists, I already kind of know in my head what the shots are before I make the shot list. What the good exercise about doing a shot list, even particularly as a director, is it forces me to not just do the same routine all the time, because it gives me more time to think about it. And when I like doing the shot list, I like listening. I make like playlists, which I'm sure everyone does, but I make like a music playlist for the movie, you know, the movie I'm making or whatever it is. And I'll listen to that music and then write and look at the script and work on the shot list. And it actually helps me think of more shots. If it's because it'll be like music I would use as temp, you know, not like random stuff. But I think, you know, the shot list, I don't have to do it, and I don't have a hard and fast rule, but I like to, because that way I don't get lazy. And I often, you know, I have the shot list, as many, I think most DPs and directors have a shot list that they, you know, it's a guideline. And when you get to set, sometimes you follow it, sometimes you stray from it, but at least you know you have a plan there. And I always have extra shots on it that I end up not being able to get, you know, but I know they're extra. And then you just kind of sit with your DP and prioritize, okay, well, we're not going to get this one, or maybe this camera can go and get it. Because we, you know, now I have a lot of other operators who can go tag team and do stuff for me, which is cool. But yeah, and then storyboard, I'll storyboard for the same reason. You know, we had a big car chase and rhythm section that I wanted to do as one shot. And, you know, from the time I first read the script, and I, you know, so Sean and I had to storyboard that for all the departments, because we were also shooting in Almeria in Spain, and we were trying to make Almeria look like Tangier. And so everywhere that I drove with that car, even though I wanted to do it all from the car, we had to dress the area outside to look like Tangier. So it was a little tricky, but it made for, you know, I think, you know, it was one of my favorite sequences that I was ever able to do. And it made me realize I love stunts. So that was good.
So we can expect lots of big action movies from you now in the future, right?
From now on.
Awesome. Is there a go-to camera lighting package that, you know, there's a lot of questions about that, you know, your preferred lenses and so on and so forth?
I do get into, I mean, you know, I change sometimes, but I'm also a creature of habit. And I don't like to branch out sometimes, but that's why I love working with other DPs too, because then they'll push me to be open to other things. I think on the last job, Colin and I think we must have tested like lenses for like 5 months. You know, we would not, you know, it was very, 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 very thoughtful decision. And then there's other times where we would test lenses for like a day and be like, that's the one. Part of that is the diplomacy of us each of us coming to the right choice and everyone feeling heard, meaning Colin and, you know, but we actually did in the end come out with a set of lenses that we were both psyched to do, but I wanted my DP to ultimately choose those lenses. You know, right now, what I've done in the past, most of my movies were, if I wasn't shooting film, which I really would like to do more of, so I just have to make that a priority. I would shoot on the Alexa or the Alexa Mini. And we did do that pretty much for the last, like, you know, Meadowland and I think We're Alone Now are both Alexa. And the show that you know, when I was on vinyl, we shot on the F65 Sony, because I came on as a DP after Rodrigo Prieto had shot the pilot, and you know, his one requirement was like, I wanted to continue the look of the show. It was very cool for me to be able to do that with David Franco, who was the other alternating DP. But I didn't want to stray because I'm a creature of habit, you know, but I did do that. And we found a LUT that we liked, that we could make it look like, we thought we could make it look like the Alexa. But I mean, to be fair, you can't really do that. Each camera, what's nice about the digital cameras is they do really all have their own look. You know, that one felt like its own thing. And it was good for that project, I think. And it's good for me to branch out sometimes. And even now, the job I'm doing now, I unfortunately had to stray from the Alexa again. But again, I'm like very stuck in my ways. But finally, I was sort of forced into doing it, and we shot on the Sony Venice, which I think is good. You know, it's a good camera, and it has a good look. But you know, it's like I'm in a comfort zone with the Alexa, so I'll usually go to that. And I really like anamorphics because I like to shoot intimate stories, but I like the combination of an intimate story told with a wider frame. And that's sort of where I'm at, like right now. That's what I'm doing, a lot of that.
Mm. And is there particular, do you find yourself gravitating towards either photographs or images from other photographers or cinematographers that you are constantly using for looks, things you reference?
Yeah, so before I usually make something, I'll make like a lookbook or a thing, or, you know, and I'll often use images from other movies as inspiration for lighting and just the mood and the tone. And it's a range. It's like a wide range of stuff, you know, of looks. And, you know, I also use a lot of still photography. I love, you know, Todd Heido, his work. You know, Philip Lorca de Corsia was the main inspiration for the look of vinyl. But, you know, I mean, obviously Rodrigo set up the look. So like, when I interviewed for that job, I hadn't seen any of the show. I hadn't seen any of the pilots. So I didn't know what Rodrigo and Marty did. And I was like, this is like a big leap, but I'm just gonna like put this look in and do this. And they were like, they liked it. So, but yeah, I sometimes think photography is really, in many ways, one of the best ways to convey to your crew, to your department heads and everybody what you want to do. And sometimes when you're trying to sell to like execs or studios a concept, they like to see movie stills. And sometimes I'll make a mood reel, using still images or sometimes not still images, but it's that you can get like more, I think more sort of back to basics with the crew. They like to see that kind of work, but the looks run the gamut. I go for what the story, the story is about, inspires it more than just like only going to a few filmmakers or cinematographers.
Yeah. I'm really excited about this roundtable you're going to join Bradford Young on tomorrow. And I know that the focus of that is going to be life balance a little bit. And just as maybe just a teaser, I'd love to, it's actually a question that's coming up quite a bit, is about how are you finding that life balance being a mother and being a successful director and cinematographer?
It's not easy. It's like, what it is if you have a good partner and you both understand the business that you're in, I think anyone can make it work. As long as there's, one parent at all times with the kids, I think that's really important. And that's what we always do, try to do. And then, being able to have the kids come and visit me wherever I'm shooting. I try to choose things that are at home. I like to be at home the best. I don't like to travel. A vacation for me is like being right here at this table. It feels like a vacation. So I'm happy to do everything. But I do love to go see new places and explore, and I like taking the kids to showing them. And I know they love it. And, because they grew up with it, like both their parents were on set. And we used to take them to set when they were little, and they would come, we would go shoot movies in other countries. We took them to Italy when they were babies to go shoot the War Story, which we shot also on Alexa. And then we took them to Austria on that crazy film. And it's hard, you have to have the right childcare and everything like that. But it was like all about, let's keep the family together. And it's, I think, harder for me than it is for them because they're used to it. And I'm, they're like doing fine. And that's really what's most important. But I enjoy being home right now. And as excited as I am to go tell more stories, I really just am trying to bask in every moment that I have at the house with them.
Yeah. Are you, can you share with us what you're working on and what we're going to be seeing in the near future?
Probably the next thing that you might see is a series that I'm making for Amazon with, it's basically based on a book called The Power, and it's about it's like a speculative fiction, but it was written by a woman named Naomi Alderman, who's basically a genius, and it's just very fun. It gets dark and crazy and weird, but it's not serious. It's not like bring you down. It has a lot of humor and satire in it, and it's about power in the world. And what I loved about the story is it's a story that takes place in a bunch of different countries around the world, and it's about all these different characters, just totally people from all different walks of life. Like, one of the main characters is in the UK, another main character is in Lagos, in Nigeria, Seattle, and then Southern America, and Eastern Europe. And it's just very like a global kind of story that I think people all over could maybe identify with, even though it's a speculative fiction. And it's basically about young girls sort of as a evolution. They basically get the ability to emit electrical shocks from their fingertips around puberty age, basically. And it's sort of about how over the course of 15 years, the gender, the power structure of the genders sort of reverse completely. And it's very interesting if you read the book, which you should, it's such a great book, but you read parts of it and you're just like, I found myself so shocked and appalled at certain things in the book. I'm like, why am I so shocked? Like, I would step back and be like, why am I so shocked at this? Oh, it's because it's happening to a man. And what's interesting is the show isn't really about, it's not just about gender. It's more actually about power, because one of the main, you know, a couple of the main characters are male characters. So it's from their perspective as well. And so the show is just about power, which I think right now in this time period is very, and always has been really a very relevant or idea.
Are you directing all of the episodes for this series?
No, I'm directing just the first two, and then I'm producing director producing the series. So it's good. I mean, it's gonna get crazier and crazier, the series. I want to go back and direct episodes later, so you never know what'll happen. Maybe I will, but I have to jump on to, I have other movies coming up, and I have a movie that I'm doing with Jennifer Lopez about the life of Griselda Blanco, and that's called The Godmother or Madrina, and Terry Winter wrote the first draft of the script, and we're working on that right now, getting that all prepped for someday down the line when normal production can resume, more or less. But I'm excited about that story because it's a gangster story, and very, people know about her, but we wanted to really tell her real story. And there's a lot of gangster movies out there, but not many that are about women and told by women. And so, yeah, it's cool. It's a cool story. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, awesome. I'm excited too. Very cool. As we get towards the end of our conversation, there's questions coming in about, what kind of advice would you share with young filmmakers that are just entering the industry now?
I would say, don't look for the quickest route to success. Like, I always set very realistic goals for myself. Doesn't mean don't be ambitious. I just think I see a lot of young people that are like lamenting that they're not further along in their career, and everything takes time. And it took me like 24 years to get to where I am. I didn't direct a film until I don't know how old I was. So after I had both my kids, because I felt like I needed life experience to direct. I do think you could get out there and make movies and direct and DP, do whatever, but at any point in time. Like, I would encourage everyone to do that. But I think, the thing I wish I did more of was probably be more brave to go out and meet people and introduce myself to older DPs, which I was afraid to do. At that time, it felt weird to go and be like, I would go to the ASC clubhouse when I was young, and it was like all men, and there were hardly any women there at all. Now that's changed, so it's amazing. But I remember, walking up to a group of guys who were standing around Conrad Hall, who I was obsessed with, one of my idols actually, and I didn't ask any questions because I felt embarrassed to ask in front of these other people. And then he actually said, they were asking him, what filter do you use on this scene in American Beauty? And he's like, I don't even remember. I just, in the moment, whatever I feel like it. And I was like, maybe I could be a DP. Like, you don't have to be so meticulous if you approach it from an emotional standpoint, if you're doing what emotionally feels right to you in the moment, and you go with sort of a artistic instinct, you don't always have to be the most technical person. And I think don't let a very technical thing scare you either. Sometimes if an opportunity presents itself there are many times I was afraid to take an opportunity because I was like, I don't know if I could do this. For example, working with Rodrigo on vinyl, I was afraid to shoot for another DP, and the only other DP I'd ever shot for was doing pickups for Sean Bobbitt, which I was also scared to do, you know, for Place Beyond the Pines. And anytime a DP shoots for another DP, it can be very, very intimidating. And I'm glad I did that, because then I ended up being able to come back and shoot the series and have like one of the best projects ever. And I learned so much from Rodrigo and from Marty, and working with David Franco, who's like one of the most brilliant lighting DPs I know. And, you know, so that it's like, sometimes you have to do the thing, even if it sounds like a nightmare and so scary, you just have to go and do it, you know, and jump in and not be afraid. So I don't know, maybe that's sort of more the advice.
That's great. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to see you. Wonderful to catch up.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Hopefully we'll get together soon.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Reed. And thank you to everybody that joined us today. Our episodes are going to be available on our website, ARRIrental.com, where you can also check out all the products we offer. And please join us next week. This Friday, actually. We're going to be sitting down with Martin Algren to talk about his latest project, Plot Against America. And you can also follow us on youtube.com/ARRI Rental Group. And until next time, cheers, everyone.